So this is what we've taken on as a challenge. This is our own insane startup, helping people do different, helping people practice doing different. Maybe we should get Ben Horowitz to fund us. Now, how do we do it? Well, it's through experiential, hands-on workshops. In essence, we're facilitating startups inside of companies. Now, this is an MIT-Harvard learning model that depicts two loops of learning. The first represents the conceptual, the second, the experiential. It is only during the second loop, when perceptions can change, where creativity and innovation happens. Think about a chef. You can read about food and recipes, you can attend lectures, but you can't really learn. You cannot create and innovate if you don't actually cook. Similarly, you can only go so far in teaching innovation, leadership, culture. After that, just like any skill, you have to practice. It has to be experiential. You have to just do it. Now, this is a fundamental challenge. How within a corporate environment do you give employees the scope to practice these skills and still maintain a high-functioning environment? That's where our innovation workshops come in. They might range from an hour to a week or every 2 weeks to full-time teams. Teams can be internal, external, or hybrid. These workshops are customized to what a company has the capacity to absorb and cope with. We work exclusively with frontline teams. This is not executive coaching. Any executives that do participate are integrated into diverse cross-functional, cross-hierarchical teams. Because these goals up here, these are the goals we're trying to achieve. And we're trying to achieve these at the front lines of an organization. And we've developed a methodology synthesizing the best and smartest that we've researched and found. So in essence, we help frontline employees practice and learn these skills. We help them do different.
These are two of the many giants on whose shoulders we stand, Peter Drucker and Clayton Christensen. Drucker undertook an empirical study and he found he can put all corporate innovation into one of 7 buckets. The least prolific was new knowledge, science. The most prolific, unexpected occurrences, surprises. Again, the paradox of how do you put surprise in a bottle? Well, Christensen has done a great job giving us some clues as to where to start. One of his observations was that the functional elements of a product or service overshoot what people were prepared to pay or the utility they gain from this kind of creeping incremental innovation that continually modifies or bolts onto the product or service. Think about a product that has so many features that you never use, many of which you might not even know exist. This happens all the time. He found that these products and services could be attacked from the bottom by simpler and or cheaper versions. He also observed another element. Disruptive innovation sometimes focuses on micro segments or niches. He called these micro-monopolies, where there is non-consumption, no competition. Recall Horowitz's tiny markets. This is all connected with the startup world. In Christensen's world, by focusing on a micro segment that you can address profitably with a product or service that is good enough, you can reinvest your profits to improve your product, all the while remaining off the radar screen. By the time incumbents notice, it's too late. You've expanded your offering and it's incrementally improved, and you've created a game changer. It's like the old adage related to how a new idea evolves from "that's stupid" to "that'll never work" to "I knew that."
Now, in our workshops, we encourage participants to research and practice telling stories about some of their favorite, insane, tiny market ideas that evolved into huge successful companies. We're going to pick on Christensen's Sony example a little later, but I do want to pick on one of Horowitz's examples, Airbnb. Now imagine sitting around a boardroom table and somebody suggests, "Hey, I've got an idea. Let's break local innkeeper laws, not pay our municipal taxes, and turn your house into a hotel room." I think you just might be accused of being insane. In fact, the urban legend story around Airbnb was that their first iteration was about something entirely different. But when they ran out of money, they thought of renting their own apartments, couches, etc., just to scrape together some cash. And lo and behold, an unexpected occurrence, a surprise.
One of the instructions we received from the CMA is to make sure you walk away with a practical tool you can try tomorrow. So here's one within an umbrella strategy that defines your company's or client's mission, vision, and values. Here's one way you can do different. Typically, companies dedicate most of their resources and focus on the top 20% of their clients that generate 80% of the revenue. The remaining 80% are typically a pain in the ass that you want to fire, and maybe you get to targets, maybe not. We approach the challenge from the other side. Who's not a customer? Who's not even on your radar screen? Where's the non-consumption, and what are the impediments? Is it cost? Is it complexity? Now redefine your product for this segment. Go back to our stories. Take Sony. RCA was the incumbent. The typical radio or stereo was this big piece of wood furniture. Perhaps you fought with your parents as to what or whose music you were going to listen to. Then Sony comes out with this crappy little tinny sounding plastic thing. But its target was non-consumption. We'll expand on this in the next slide. But right now, think about a current example. I kind of like Tata's $2,000 car. You can look at it as the worst car in the world, and a stupid idea. In fact, I'm sure some of the incumbent car companies think it is. But the non-consumption is the fellow, in fact millions of them, with a scooter for whom it's good enough. Come up with the example of non-consumption and of a related good enough product, service alternative in your own business. If you're struggling with this task of doing different, for those of you attending here, we'd like to offer a free mini workshop, so don't hesitate to grab us after this or reach out to us on LinkedIn and we can figure something out.
Now, that previous slide example might actually seem kind of easy. In fact, our workshops can be easy and fun. It's a little like improv. Now, this was but one tiny sliver within our overall experiential curriculum where we've collected a diverse set of ways to think about and pursue different innovation challenges. Now, one word of caution when using models. They're a useful starting point, but that's all. Keep in mind the wisdom of George Box, who said, all models are wrong, some are useful. Now, back to why this is so hard. I mentioned during the financial misdirection slide that I was going to bring up some marketing misdirection that we suffer from. Our bias, our education and training teaches us to focus on some combination of product features or customer segments. What Christensen tries to teach us is to ignore these and focus on what he calls jobs to be done. This is perhaps one of the hardest points to get across in our workshops. In the case of the Sony transistor radio, the job was listening to music in the park with your friends. It's a story, it's a visual. Do you want to listen to music in the park with your friends? The quality of the product was irrelevant as there was no alternative. The marketing pitch was simple and binary. Yes or no. There's no maybe. Do you want to listen to music in the park with your friends? I haven't even told you what the product was. That's the brilliance of jobs to be done. Now, we keep coming back to some deeper root cause as to why this is so difficult, when at times it might be so obvious and easy. Harry DeGoose, who we referenced before, described the task as to change the mental models that decision makers carry in their heads. How do you challenge assumptions and norms? These are the elements that limit us and constrict our ability to innovate. How do you shock or break the system? How can we punch you, ourselves, in the nose? As we mentioned, we use a lot of hacks and experimentation to try to shake up perceptions. We didn't talk much about experimentation today, but small iterative experiments, including the proper design of small iterative experiments, are an important part of our process. If you think about science, it seems so many inventions and discoveries come from failed experiments. Again, surprises. The great part about failed experiments is that they force a change in perception, a change in lens. Your hypothesis, what you thought was going to happen, didn't. Your whole perspective has to change now. You cannot deny a new reality, different from that represented by your current mental models.
Edmund Burke once said, "A way of seeing is a way of not seeing." The paradox is that what we see defines what we don't see. The gap between Drucker's empirical work and Christensen's innovative models are our personal and organizational assumption, biases, models, financial misdirection, and marketing misdirection. We're back to Peter Senge. This is why the 3 pillars to his stool were not just to understand your aspirations and motivations and to think in systems, but also to have time to reflect. Again, to reflect on your perceptions, your mental models, and biases. If you go way back, Epicurus, the happiness philosopher from ancient Greece, also had the time for reflection. as one of his happiness pillars. Yet we are our own worst enemies when faced with the need to change and innovate. If we set aside the time to reflect, the challenge, the task should make us happy. This should be fun. This is again why I mentioned it feels like our workshops are as much about leadership and culture as they are about innovation.
Now, here's a scary thought, so don't wait too long before you turn your mind to the innovation paradox. Innovation begets innovation. Innovation builds on previous innovation. New solutions create new problems. There's a really interesting element of evolutionary theory here that would suggest that this pace of insights evolving chaos into order is in fact increasing in frequency and speed. In evolutionary terms, the more genetic material there is, the more opportunity for mutations, gene trading, and symbiosis. Steve Johnson has a great TED Talk where his punchline revolves around ideas having sex. That's right, somehow we keep coming